honest story.
Martin age, 40s. Martin is a thin, scruffy man with a gentle and kind face. His eyes reflect both the hardship he's faced and the hope that he still carries within. His skin is weathered by years of living on the streets, and his clothes are worn and faded, yet they still hold sentimental value. Despite his rough appearance, there's an undeniable warmth to him. Ethan age, 30. Ethan is a tall, well-groomed man with sharp, angular features. His appearance is always polished, wearing expensive, tailored suits that reflect his wealthy status. His demeanor is cold and distant, and he carries himself with an air of entitlement. He enjoys mocking and belittling others, especially Martin, whom he looks down on for his circumstances. He is self-centered, often blind to the emotions and struggles of those around him. Karen age, 35. Hispanic. Karen has a petite build with long brown hair and a warm, inviting smile. She dresses simply but stylishly, often in earthy tones that reflect her down-to-earth personality. Her eyes are kind and filled with understanding. The city of Raleigh, North Carolina, glows under the bright lights of its most exclusive district. The streets are lined with polished glass buildings, their windows reflecting the wealth and privilege that fill the air. People in tailored suits and expensive dresses glide past one another, lost in their own worlds, talking of deals, parties, and power. The scent of luxury drifts from upscale restaurants, where elegant patrons sit at white-clothed tables, clinking glasses filled with the finest wine. And then, just around the corner from this high society, sits Martin. A homeless man, in his 40s, Martin is a stark contrast to the polished world that surrounds him. He sits on the cold, cracked sidewalk, his thin, ragged form huddled in an old coat. The fabric is frayed, and his shoes have long since lost their shine. His face is kind, though weathered by time and struggle, but his eyes, those eyes still carry a flicker of hope. He looks up as the world moves around him, aware of his place in it, yet never quite defeated by the constant rejection he faces. The glances that people throw his way are filled with contempt and pity, but he simply absorbs them, allowing nothing to break his spirit. To him, kindness is a rare commodity, and survival has become a quiet, daily battle. Inside one of the finest restaurants just across the street, Ethan is enjoying the evening with his colleagues. He's the epitome of wealth and privilege, sitting comfortably at a table draped in silk, his suit tailored to perfection. He leans back in his chair, smiling as a waiter refills his glass with top-shelf whiskey. His sharp features and confident demeanor speak of a man who has everything, a successful CEO, born into wealth, with the world at his feet. Ethan thrives on power and control, and the idea that anyone outside of his circle is beneath him doesn't just cross his mind, it defines his worldview. As he takes a sip from his glass, his gaze drifts toward the window. His eyes briefly land on Martin sitting across the street. For a fleeting moment, Ethan's expression flickers, a mix of irritation and indifference. He quickly returns to his conversation, but the thought lingers in his mind. The man on the street, dirty and alone, is nothing more than an unfortunate reminder of the world that Ethan has long since left behind. Ethan, muttering under his breath, as he looks at Martin, pathetic. They always want handouts, don't they? His companions laugh, as if the comment is nothing more than a passing joke. Ethan's words hang in the air, a subtle but potent display of the deep-seated prejudice that he carries. The homeless, especially black men like Martin, are nothing more than a nuisance to him, a visible sign of the inequality that Ethan has never had to face. Ethan's friend, chuckling, you'd think they'd be ashamed of themselves. The laughter around the table is cold, but it's the sort of laughter that comes from those who have never known true hardship. Martin remains unaware, focused on his own survival, a quiet witness to the world that has chosen to ignore him. The contrast between Ethan and Martin could not be starker. One sits in the warmth of privilege, surrounded by luxury and comfort, while the other is left to endure the cold, invisible to those who pass by. In this brief moment, the divide between them is clear. Ethan sees Martin as a lesser being, someone to be judged, not helped. His entire life has been shaped by the power that comes with his race and wealth, and he has never questioned the validity of his superiority. But what Ethan doesn't know is that life has a way of changing perspectives, and the night is about to take a turn that neither of them could have ever predicted. The laughter inside the restaurant grows louder as the night wears on, the air thick with the sounds of indulgence and privilege. Ethan sits comfortably in his chair, surrounded by his friends, discussing their latest business ventures with an air of superiority. But outside, just beyond the glass windows, the world is different. Martin sits alone on the sidewalk, clutching his worn-out coat around him, the chill of the evening creeping into his bones. He watches the people inside, longing for something, anything, to fill the emptiness in his stomach. His eyes are tired, but still hopeful, even as the world ignores him. Inside the restaurant, the conversation shifts to something less refined. Ethan is feeling good, the wine having loosened his tongue and given him an even stronger sense of power. Ethan, with a laugh, raising his glass, you know what's funny? The number of people like that man outside. Gesturing toward Martin, sitting there, asking for handouts. It's pathetic. How does someone just give up like that? His friends laugh, a group of men and women who share his views on wealth and status. They all see the homeless as nothing more than a nuisance. But Ethan, feeling emboldened by the alcohol and the superiority that comes with his wealth, decides to make the moment more interesting. Ethan, grinning, you know what? Let's have a little fun. He stands up from the table, his movements confident and purposeful. His friends follow, curious but amused. Ethan walks toward the door with his entourage in tow, stepping out into the cool night air. Martin glances up as the group approaches, but he doesn't move. He's used to people passing by, ignoring him, and sometimes even mocking him. This time, however, there's a shift in the air. Ethan stops in front of Martin, blocking his view of the street. Ethan, smirking, hey, buddy. You like being out here, huh? Just sitting around, asking for scraps? Martin looks up slowly, his face calm but weary. He doesn't reply, but the way he stares back at Ethan shows a quiet dignity. Ethan's grin widens as he looks around at his friends, who are all watching, eager to see what happens next. Ethan, mockingly, you're really doing this, huh? Sitting out here begging for a few coins? You're not even worth the time to throw a few bucks your way. One of Ethan's friends, a tall man with slicked back hair, laughs loudly. Yeah, man, this is too easy. He's probably hoping some rich guy will throw him a few dollars so he can get a drink. Pathetic. Ethan turns back to Martin, his tone shifting to something crueler. Ethan, tell you what, buddy. I'm gonna give you a little gift. You don't get anything for free, so how about you eat this? With a flourish, Ethan grabs his half-eaten plate of food and flings it directly at Martin. The mashed potatoes, gravy, and a bit of steak splatter across his clothes. The rich smell of the food hits Martin, but there's no delight in his eyes. He remains silent, though a flash of anger flickers in his expression. Ethan, laughing, what, no gratitude? I'm giving you a free meal, and you can't even say thank you? The group laughs even harder now, their voices mocking and cold. Martin's heart races, but he doesn't rise to the bait. He stays seated, quietly wiping the food off his face, his hands trembling slightly but his eyes locked on Ethan. Ethan, smiling, cruelly, oh, come on, man. You're supposed to eat it. Isn't that what you do? Beg for scraps, eat whatever they throw at you? The laughter intensifies, echoing in the cold night air. Ethan steps closer, bending down to look Martin directly in the eyes. Ethan, sneering, it's not like you have a choice, right? You want food? Here. Have the rest of my drink. He takes his glass of wine and, without hesitation, dumps it all over Martin's head. The red wine drips down his face, staining his already dirty clothes. Ethan stands back, watching with satisfaction as Martin is covered in food and drink, humiliated in front of everyone. Ethan's friend, laughing, that's the spirit. Now that's what I call charity. The group continues to mock and taunt Martin, their voices growing louder, echoing through the empty street. Martin, despite the humiliation, remains silent. He doesn't shout back, doesn't retaliate. Instead, he slowly wipes his face, the sting of the wine mixing with the bitterness of the situation. Ethan, teasing, you want more, huh? Maybe I'll throw in a little dessert for you. Want some of my bread too? He tosses the remainder of his bread roll at Martin, who catches it in his hands, still holding his dignity in the face of the cruel show unfolding before him. But before he can say anything, Ethan steps forward once again, towering over him. Ethan, smirking, what are you going to do, huh? Sit there all day and beg for more? You're lucky I'm even giving you the time of day. Ethan turns back to his group, laughing, feeling the rush of control. But as he does, he notices something in Martin's eyes. It's not anger. It's not fear. It's something deeper, something that Ethan has never encountered before. Something that will change everything. Ethan's friend said, "Man, you're way too kind to him. Shouldn't even be giving him this much." The laughter continues, but Ethan's attention drifts away from the group, his gaze fixed on Martin. There's something unsettling about the way Martin looks at him now. As if he sees through him. As if, for the first time, Ethan isn't the one holding the power. The laughter around Ethan and his friends grows louder, a chorus of mockery that cuts through the quiet street. Martin sits motionless, his hands clenched tightly around the bread that Ethan had thrown at him, his knuckles white. He's trembling, but not from fear. No, Martin is used to this kind of treatment. It's the anger that churns inside him, the anger that has been building for years, buried beneath layers of indifference. Ethan and his friends think they've broken him, that they've reduced him to nothing but a laughingstock. But Martin knows something they don't. He knows that even in the face of their cruelty, he still has control. Ethan watches Martin, a slight frown creeping onto his face as the man before him doesn't react the way he expects. Ethan is used to people crumbling when he mocks them, used to them begging for mercy or, at the very least, cowering in fear. But Martin doesn't flinch. Instead, he sits still, his gaze fixed on Ethan, as if silently challenging him. Ethan, narrowing his eyes, what's wrong, huh? You gonna cry? I've given you food, I've given you wine. What more do you want? You should be grateful. You should be on your knees thanking me. The words are spat out, but Martin doesn't respond. He doesn't say a word. He just continues to stare at Ethan, a look that holds something more powerful than the mockery around him. His silence speaks volumes. Ethan's friend, laughing, he's not even gonna say thank you. How typical. Just sits there like an idiot. Ethan, grinning, cruelly, well, I'm done here. This is too easy. But as Ethan turns to walk away, the sound of screeching tires suddenly fills the air. It's too loud to ignore. The sound grows louder, and then a car, speeding, out of control, comes barreling down the street. Ethan doesn't see it at first. It's a blur of lights and motion, and before he can even process it, the car is too close. Ethan, eyes wide, panic setting in, shit. Move. Get out of the way. But it's too late. The car is speeding directly toward Ethan, and in that split second, there's nothing he can do. He stands frozen in place, paralyzed by the sudden realization that he's in danger. Time slows down, and for the first time in his life, Ethan feels helpless. But then, before he can even think, Martin, the man he had humiliated, the one he had belittled, moves. With no hesitation, Martin pushes Ethan out of the way, shoving him hard to the ground. Martin takes the full force of the car. The sound of the impact is deafening. The world around them seems to collapse into chaos as Martin crumples to the asphalt, his body twisting in unnatural angles. For a brief moment, everything goes still. Ethan's breath catches in his throat as he watches Martin's lifeless body lie in the street. The car screeches to a halt, its tires leaving a long trail of rubber as it narrowly avoids hitting Ethan. The driver quickly speeds away, not caring to check if they've caused harm. But Ethan can't move. His body is frozen, his mind racing with confusion and disbelief. He feels a sickening churn in his stomach as the weight of the situation sets in. Ethan, shouting, panicked, no. No. Get up. Come on, wake up. He rushes over to Martin, shaking him roughly, his hands trembling. Martin doesn't move. Blood is visible on his clothes, seeping through the mess of food and wine. The reality of what has just happened hits Ethan like a punch to the gut. Ethan, desperate, please, don't do this. Please don't be dead. You saved my life. His voice breaks as he continues to shake Martin, but there's no response. Ethan's heart is pounding in his chest, his thoughts scattered. How could this happen? How could the man he had tormented, the man he had humiliated in front of everyone, be the one to save him? The cruel irony of it all is suffocating. With trembling hands, Ethan pulls out his phone and dials emergency services, his voice panicked as he gives them the location. But even as the call is made, the reality of the situation is impossible to ignore. He's responsible for Martin being in this position. He's the one who made him feel small, worthless, and helpless. And now, he's the one whose life was saved by the very man he had treated like garbage. As the sirens begin to wail in the distance, Ethan stays by Martin's side, his mind spinning. The world around him feels distorted, the reality of the night turning upside down. Ethan, to himself, voice trembling, I didn't know. I didn't know you were this strong. The sirens grow louder as Ethan waits, unsure of what's going to happen next. The contrast between his actions just moments ago and the man lying in front of him could not be more stark. Martin had no reason to save Ethan, no reason to risk his life for someone who had shown him nothing but disdain. Yet, he did. And in doing so, he changed everything for Ethan. As the ambulance pulls up and the paramedics rush toward them, Ethan steps back, his body shaking with the weight of what just transpired. He looks down at Martin, lying unconscious, and realizes that this moment, this one act of sacrifice has shattered everything Ethan thought he knew about the world. Ethan, softly, almost to himself, I was wrong. I was so wrong. The ambulance lights flash bright against the dark street, a sharp contrast to the silent tension that hangs in the air. The paramedics rushed to Martin, carefully placing him on a stretcher, trying to stabilize him. Ethan stands off to the side, still in shock, his mind spinning. His hands are trembling, and his face is pale as he watches them work. He wants to scream, to shout, but no words come. All he can do is stand there, stunned by the events that unfolded in a matter of moments. The paramedics load Martin into the ambulance, and Ethan is left standing alone in the street. His friends, who had been with him just moments ago, are now nowhere to be seen. They have all retreated, leaving Ethan to process the weight of what just happened. Ethan, to himself, voice hoarse, what the hell just happened? Ethan takes a few steps forward, his mind racing. Martin had saved him, a man he had mocked, belittled, and humiliated just hours before. He had thrown food at him, ridiculed him, called him pathetic. And yet, Martin had given his life to save Ethan. The contrast between what he had done and what Martin had done is overwhelming. Ethan feels a lump rise in his throat, a sense of guilt he has never felt before. As the ambulance doors close, Ethan's feet move before his mind can catch up. He rushes to his car, his hands still shaking, and drives to the hospital. The road ahead feels long, but it's nothing compared to the distance he needs to cover inside himself. He can't explain it, but something has changed, something deep inside him. And it's terrifying. At the hospital, Ethan arrives at the emergency room, his face tense with worry. He approaches the front desk, asking for Martin. The nurse gives him a brief glance, then leads him down a quiet hallway. He's guided to a small waiting room, where Martin is being treated. The silence is suffocating, and Ethan can't help but feel like an intruder. He sits down, unable to focus on anything but the flash of memories from the past few hours. Ethan, softly, almost to himself, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be here. He stares at the floor, his mind spinning with guilt and regret. He wonders if Martin will make it. He wonders if he'll ever be able to make amends for what he's done. How can someone like him ever make things right? As the door opens, the doctor steps in. Ethan stands up immediately, his heart racing. "Doctor, he's stable for now. But he's got some serious injuries. It's going to be a long road to recovery." Ethan exhales in relief, but it's tempered by the weight of his actions. He doesn't know what to say, doesn't know how to make it right. The doctor's words echo in his mind. Long road to recovery. A few days later, Ethan returns to the hospital every day. At first, he simply sits in the corner, watching Martin from a distance. Martin doesn't recognize him at first, his mind still foggy from the pain and the trauma. But Ethan's presence is constant. Each day, Ethan shows up with flowers or a book, sitting quietly, not knowing how to begin to apologize for everything. Then, one day, as Martin's eyes slowly flutter open, he sees Ethan sitting there, looking out the window. The room is silent, save for the beeping of the machines monitoring Martin's vitals. For a moment, neither man speaks. Ethan is unsure of how to break the silence, his guilt overwhelming him. "Ethan," hesitantly, I don't know what to say." Martin looks at him, his expression soft but tired. There's a hint of the same quiet dignity that Ethan had seen the night he saved him. He doesn't speak right away, but when he does, his voice is calm. "Martin, you don't have to say anything. You're here now. That's enough." The words hit Ethan like a wave. For the first time, he feels a weight lifting from his chest. Martin isn't angry. He isn't demanding an apology. He's simply offering understanding, giving Ethan a chance to be better. "Ethan," guilt-ridden, "I'm sorry. I never should have treated you like that. I was wrong, Martin. I didn't see you for who you are." Martin slowly reaches out, his hand trembling, not from weakness, but from the scars that this world has left on him. He places it gently on Ethan's hand. "Martin, we all make mistakes. But it's what we do after we realize them that matters." For the first time, Ethan understands. He understands what Martin has been through, the struggle, the rejection. He realizes that the kindness Martin showed him wasn't out of obligation, but out of a sense of humanity that Ethan had lost long ago. A few months later, the hospital visitations fade into the past, and Ethan is now a regular part of Martin's life. They start to spend more time together. Ethan takes Martin out to lunch, to talk, to listen. Martin begins to teach Ethan what it means to truly help others, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. In return, Ethan starts to see the world differently. He begins volunteering at shelters, working to change his perspective on the people he once looked down upon. One afternoon, as they sit together in a quiet park, sharing stories of their lives, Ethan realizes that Martin has become more than just someone he helped, he's become a friend, a brother. "Ethan," smiling, "you know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you saved my life." Martin, with a small chuckle, "I didn't save you for gratitude. I saved you because you're worth it. We all are." And in that moment, Ethan realizes that Martin had given him the greatest gift of all, not just life, but the chance to change, to see the world through the eyes of someone who had endured so much and yet never gave up on others. As they sit in the park, the sound of children playing in the background, Ethan and Martin share a moment of silence, knowing that they've both been changed forever. This story teaches us that true strength is not measured by wealth, status, or appearance, but by the kindness and compassion we show to others. Sometimes, the most unexpected people can teach us the greatest lessons about humanity. No one is beneath us, and we all deserve respect and dignity. It's never too late to change, to understand, and to make things right. If you found this story moving, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that will inspire and challenge you in the future.